Tonight, we are going to travel back almost 400 years to the cold canals of Holland and live through one of the strangest, gentlest, most human seasons in all of history. The winter that an entire nation fell quietly, helplessly in love with a tulip. Not with a king or a conqueror or a chest of gold, but with a single simple flower that for one extraordinary year became worth more than houses, more than farmland, more than gold itself. We call it now the Tulip Mania. And it is one of those rare true stories that seems almost too strange to have happened at all. It happened in the Dutch Republic in the years around 1636, in what we now remember as the Dutch Golden Age, a small, cold, flat, watery little country, half of it reclaimed from the sea, that had somehow, in the space of a generation, become the wealthiest and the cleverest nation on the face of the earth. Its ships sailed to the very ends of the world and came home riding low in the water, heavy with spices and silver and silk. Its merchants counted their fortunes in the tall, narrow houses along the canals. And its painters, for this was the age of Rembrandt and of Vermeer, were filling their canvases with a warm golden light the world had never seen before. It was a country grown suddenly, comfortably rich, and full of people with a little money in their pockets, and a deep love of beautiful things to spend it on. And of all the beautiful things that money could buy in that golden age, there was one, just then, that everyone had begun to want above all the rest. It was not a jewel, or a painting, or a fine house on the water. It was a flower. And tonight, slowly and gently, we are going to follow that flower from the far-off gardens of the East where it first began, through the long, strange rising of the fever it set loose, and the wild and wonderful tales it scattered behind it, all the way to the quiet grey morning when the dreams simply faded and everyone blinked and went home, and the world turned out, after all, to be perfectly all right. But before we begin, if these slow journeys through history help carry you off to sleep, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel, and we will be here to do this for you again every single night. Whenever sleep will not come and find us, and we will slip away together into some quiet and far-off corner of the past, and let the rest of the noisy world go dark behind us. So settle in now, and let the day fall away behind you. Picture, if it helps, a cold, clear night in an old Dutch city. A row of narrow brick houses with stepped gables leaning gently over a still black canal, their warm reflections wavering in the dark water. A thin skin of ice forming at the edges, and behind one leaded window, high up under the roofline, the small, steady glow of a single candle. Somewhere, a church bell counts the hour and falls silent. that is where we are going tonight. There is nothing you need to follow, and nothing you need to remember, and nowhere you need to be. Just let yourself drift down into that cold, quiet city, and we will begin. To understand how a whole sensible country could lose its head over a single flower, we have to begin with the flower itself, and with how new and how miraculous it once seemed to European eyes. For the tulip is not a Dutch flower. It is not even a European one. It came from far away to the east, from the high, cold, windswept plains and mountains of Central Asia, where its wild ancestors had bloomed for ages, small and tough and brilliant against the grey rock. And for centuries it had been loved and gathered and cultivated in the gardens of the Ottoman world, in the courts of the sultans, where it was honored as one of the most beautiful things a garden could hold, its slender cup admired by poets, its shape embroidered onto silk and painted onto shining tiles, its name a word for elegance itself. And it came west, the old story goes, by a small and almost accidental road. In the middle of the 1500s, an ambassador from the Holy Roman Emperor, a careful and curious man named Bosbek, was sent on a long mission to the glittering court of the Ottoman Sultan, far away in the east. And among all the marvels he saw in that dazzling place, he noticed this flower growing in the gardens and worn, as the fashionable men there wore it, tucked into the very folds of their turbans. He was charmed by it. And when at last, after long years, he journeyed home, he carried back with him into Europe some bulbs and some seeds of this strange and lovely Eastern thing, a curiosity to show the gardeners and scholars of the West. There is even a gentle little tale about the very name we use, the word tulip itself. They say it came from a misunderstanding on that long road home, that a traveler, pointing at the flower and asking a Turkish gardener what the thing was called, was given a word that meant not the flower at all, but the turban that it so resembled, sitting there in the folds of the cloth. And the name simply stuck, a small happy mistake, 400 years old, so that to this very day, every time anyone says the word tulip, they are, without the faintest idea of it, calling the flower a turban. Such are the tiny accidents that all of history is quietly built from. From Vienna, the tulip traveled onward into the careful hands of one of the greatest plant scholars of that whole age, a botanist named Clusius. He was a serious man, a true and patient scientist of flowers, who studied the tulip closely and grew it and wrote about it and watched in fascination as it threw out its astonishing range of colors. And near the very end of the 1500s, Clusius came north to take up a great post at the famous old university in the Dutch town of Leiden. And he brought his precious tulips with him and planted them there in the cool, wet, black soil of Holland. And there, in that flat northern land of water and mist and grey light, something wonderful happened. The tulip loved it. The cool, damp climate of the Low Countries, the rich sea-laid earth, suited the flower better than anywhere it had yet grown in all of Europe, and it flourished and bloomed as gloriously as ever it had in the warm gardens of the distant East. It was almost as though the flower had been traveling all that long way, all those years, all those thousands of miles, simply looking for Holland, and had finally, quietly, come home. Clusius himself, by all the old accounts, did not want to share his treasures. He guarded his bulbs jealously as specimens for his science, too precious to be sold off into ordinary gardens. And he turned away the wealthy men who came offering him good money for them. But there is a story, and we will come back later tonight to just how far we can trust these old stories. There is a story that one dark night his university garden was robbed, and a great quantity of his guarded bulbs were stolen clean away into the night. And from those stolen bulbs, passed hand to hand and multiplied season upon season, grew the whole great Dutch love affair with the tulip. However, it truly began by theft, or simply by the slow, ordinary spread of a beautiful thing from one garden to the next. By the early 1600s, the flower had escaped the scholars' careful beds and entered the gardens of the wealthy, and the Dutch had begun, quietly, and then not so quietly at all, to fall in love. And it is worth lingering here, in the warm dark, to understand why. Because the tulips they fell in love with were not the tulips you and I know. To us, a tulip is an ordinary, cheerful thing. A simple, solid cup of red or yellow or white that you might buy by the bunch on a Tuesday and never think twice about. But those plain tulips, the solid-colored ones, were the cheapest and the least regarded of all in the Dutch markets. The ones they truly prized, the ones that would before long drive grown men half out of their wits, were the strange and spectacular ones they called the broken tulips. Picture one of them, slowly. On a single petal, a ground of pure, clean white, white as the snow on the gables, and running up through that white, from the dark base of the cup all the way to the curling tip, long, delicate flames and feathers of deep crimson, or of wine-dark violet, or of dusky imperial purple. No two flowers were ever marked in quite the same way. Each one was a small, unrepeatable painting, made by nothing but the flower itself, fine as if drawn by the most delicate brush a master ever held. The white and the colour flowing into one another in feathers and flares and streaks of an elegance that hardly seemed possible in a living thing. To the people of that age, who had never seen the like, they did not look quite real. They looked like something out of a dream. And the finest of them had names, grand names, like the titles of nobility, for these were the aristocrats of the flower world. There was the Viceroy, and the Admiral of Admirals, and the General of Generals. There was the Admiral van der Eyck, and the Paragon. And grandest of all, the rarest, the most coveted, the most impossibly legendary flower in the entire world, the Semper Augustus. A bloom of flawless white, feathered all over with flame red, rising from a deep blue shadowed base, of which, so people whispered, only a tiny handful of bulbs existed anywhere on the face of the earth. Men spoke of the Semper Augustus the way men speak of a famous diamond or a crown jewel. To own one was to own a piece of living legend. For this is what the tulip had quietly become in that prosperous land. It was not merely a flower. It had grown into a kind of badge, a thing that announced to anyone who saw it bloom in your garden or stand in a costly glass in your window, that here was a person of wealth and refinement and taste. To grow fine tulips was to show the world that you had arrived. And so the rich and the would-be rich alike began to covet them and to compete, quietly and then not so quietly, for the loveliest and the rarest, and the prices of the finest bulbs, all through the early 1600s, began to climb. And here is the secret hidden at the very center of all of it. The secret that not one single soul in that whole feverish century ever understood. That gorgeous flaming pattern, the very thing that made these flowers so precious and so prized, was caused, in truth, by a sickness. The broken tulips were, every last one of them, gently and invisibly diseased. They carried something passed quietly from plant to plant, something so small that no one on earth would even glimpse its true nature for 300 more years. And that same hidden illness that painted those magnificent flames across the petals also weakened the bulb that bore them, so that it grew slowly and feebly and put out fewer and fewer offspring with every passing season. The most beautiful tulips in the world were also the sickest and the frailest, and therefore the rarest. No one could simply grow more of them to order, however much gold he laid on the table. One could only plant a prize bulb and wait and hope and watch it put out one or two small pale offshoots in a whole year, like a slow and grudging little miracle drawn up out of the cold ground. The beauty was real, and the beauty was desperately, achingly scarce. And scarcity, as we are about to see, is a kind of slow and patient fuel, waiting only for a spark. Let yourself settle a little deeper now into the warm and the dark, as the years turn and the love of the flower spreads through that small, rich country. There is no hurry at all to this story. We have the whole long night. For the passion for tulips spread, all through those years, outward and downward, from the gardens of the very richest into the lives of more and more ordinary people. To grow fine tulips, even modest ones, became the mark of a person of standing and good taste. The wealthiest collectors laid out walled gardens behind their tall canal houses, formal beds in neat geometric patterns, each precious variety labeled on its little painted stake. And because the flower itself bloomed for only a week or two each spring and then was gone, They paid artists to paint their tulips so that they might enjoy them all year round. These paintings were gathered into beautiful books, the tulip books, they were called, page upon page of exquisite watercolors on thick cream vellum, each flower painted life-sized in all its feathered glory, its grand name lettered beneath, and, tellingly, sometimes its price. Some of those beautiful books survive to this day in the great museums, and the most famous painting of the Semper Augustus that we still have is a watercolor from one of them, the closest any of us will ever come to seeing, with our own eyes, the most expensive flower that ever bloomed. So it began, as these things so often do, as something gentle and lovely and harmless, the pleasure of people who loved beautiful flowers and could afford to indulge that love. But somewhere in the rising of it, slowly, the thing began to change its nature. For where there is a beautiful thing that is genuinely rare and that everyone of taste suddenly desires, there comes, sooner or later, as surely as winter, the question of price. And the prices of the finest tulips had been climbing, season upon season, until they had begun to draw the eye not only of the gardener, but of the trader, of men who saw in this beloved flower not a thing to plant and admire, but a thing to buy cheaply and sell dear. And that was the spark, dropped at last into all that patient fuel. Now, to understand the true strangeness of what came next, you have to understand one quiet, peculiar fact about the way a tulip actually lives, a small detail of nature that lies, oddly, at the very heart of the whole wild affair. For a tulip is not a flower you can hold up and admire whenever you please. It blooms for only a week or two in the spring, and then the petals fall, and the show is over for another whole year. And for all the long rest of that year, the whole of the summer, and the autumn, and the deep frozen heart of the winter, the tulip is not a flower at all. It is only a bulb, a plain, brown, papery thing, much like an onion, lying asleep and hidden in the dark earth, showing nothing whatever of itself above the ground. And so a trade grew up, strangest of all trades, around a thing that, for most of the year, could not even be seen. Through the warm months, when the bulbs could be safely lifted from the soil, a grower sold them in the ordinary way, hand to hand, the solid bulb passing from one palm to the next. But the hunger for tulips had grown so much greater than those few summer months could ever feed. And so, through the autumn and into the deep of winter, when every tulip bulb in the whole country lay sleeping underground, and there was nothing at all, to see or to touch or to dig up, the Dutch went on buying and selling them anyway. They bought and sold flowers that were not flowers yet, bulbs they could not lift, blooms no living eye had seen and would not see for months. They traded slips of paper. They traded promises. "I will buy that buried bulb from you," the contract said, "when the spring comes and you dig it up for such and such a price." And they had a perfect plain name for this peculiar business. They called it the wind handle, the wind trade, the trade in wind. And where this trade in wind took place was not some grand exchange, not some marble hall of commerce with high, serious windows and clerks. It happened in the back rooms of taverns, on long winter evenings, by the light of tallow candles. Picture the scene, for it is a cozy one, whatever its folly. Outside, the frozen dark, the canals icing over, the snow heaped soft on the gables, the cold pressing at the shutters. And inside, a low, warm room, smoke-darkened beams close overhead, the smell of pipe smoke and spilled wine and damp wool, the fire muttering in the grate. And around a scarred wooden table, a dozen men in sober black coats and clean white collars, leaning in close in the candlelight, buying and selling the most beautiful flowers in the world. Flowers that at that very moment were nothing but cold sleeping bulbs in the frozen ground, streets and streets away across the dark city. They called these little gatherings their colleges, half in jest, as though they were grave societies of learned men. There was a small fee, a few coins of wine money paid to the house for the privilege. There were customs and rules to the bidding, understood by all. There was warmth and good fellowship and wine and rising laughter, and beneath all of it, the quickening, intoxicating excitement of watching numbers climb. And no money, often changed hands on the night, only the promise, written into a book, sealed with a handshake, to settle up come the spring. And the men who gathered in those warm rooms were no longer only the wealthy. As the prices rose and the stories spread, more and more ordinary people were drawn in. Weavers and bakers and joiners and tradesmen of every kind, sober and hard-working folk who, in any other year, would never have dreamed of staking money on anything. And it would be easy, looking back, to call them greedy or foolish. But it was something gentler and more human than that. It was hope. For they had watched their neighbors grow richer, week by week, on nothing but slips of paper and a beautiful flower. And it seemed, suddenly, that here was a door standing open into a brighter and an easier life. The simple, decent hope of getting on a little in the world, of one day owning fine things and a finer house, of leaving their children better off than themselves. The tulip, the loveliest thing that money could buy, seemed to be offering itself as the gentlest ladder up toward all of it. And so they walked through the open door, the same as everyone else. And the prices climbed, and they climbed with them, and so did half the country. For this is the way of such things, and it has been the way of them in every age and every land since. As more and more people saw their neighbors growing richer, on paper, on nothing but promises, more and more of them wanted in. And as more wanted in, the prices rose. And as the prices rose, the profits looked sweeter still. And as the profits looked sweeter, yet more came crowding in. The old spiral, turning faster and faster, feeding upon itself, each turn making the next turn seem only sensible. A bulb that had sold for a modest sum one autumn might sell for 10 times that by the dead of the same winter. A single contract might change hands 5 or 6 times in a season, passed from buyer to buyer to buyer, each one selling it onward for a little more than he paid, and none of them, not one, ever seeing or touching or planting a single actual flower. The tulips bloomed only in the imagination now. The real flowers slept on, untroubled, under the frozen ground, while above them, in the warm, bright taverns, their phantom selves were bought and sold for fortunes. And what fortunes? Let me give you a way to feel the size of it, lying there in the dark. A skilled craftsman in Holland in those days, a good carpenter, a master weaver, an honest tradesman at the very top of his craft, might earn, in a whole year of solid work, a few 100 guilders. And at the dizzy height of the fever, a single bulb of the rarest sort could change hands for thousands of guilders, for more, far more, than such a man could earn in 10 years of labor, in 20, in a whole working lifetime. For a flower, for the wintertime promise of a flower, still fast asleep in the cold, dark earth. The grandest of them all, the legendary Semper Augustus, was spoken of at sums so vast they sound like numbers out of a fairy story. Enough, men said, to buy one of the fine tall houses on the very best canal in all of Amsterdam. For one bulb. For one sleeping bulb of one impossibly beautiful flower. It is here, around this giddy, glittering height, that the famous stories begin, the wild and wonderful tales that have been told about the Tulip Mania ever since, for nearly 400 years. And they are such very good stories that I want to tell them to you now, properly, in all their color, in the warm dark, exactly the way the old books love to tell them. So let me tell them the way they have been told for centuries, and then, a little later tonight, gently, the two of us together, we will sit and sort out how much of all of it was ever really true. The first tale, and the most famous of them all, is the tale of the sailor and the onion. It goes like this. There was a wealthy Dutch merchant, a great dealer in the rarest tulips, who had just taken delivery, at enormous cost, of one of his very greatest treasures, a single bulb of the Semper Augustus itself, worth a small fortune, which he set down with care on the counter of his counting house. That same morning, a sailor came to his door, a rough, honest seaman just off a long voyage, bringing the welcome news that one of the merchant's ships had safely come into port. The merchant, delighted, rewarded the man as was the kindly custom, with a fine breakfast, a good red herring, to eat or to carry away. And the sailor, a simple fellow who knew the sea and the rigging and the stars, but knew nothing in the world of flowers, happened to spy, lying there on the rich man's counter, what looked for all the world like a common onion, and thinking it a humble thing, and just the sharp, sweet relish a man wants beside a herring, he quietly slipped it into his pocket and wandered off down to the quayside and sat himself in the cold, thin sunshine by the water and ate the single most expensive breakfast in the entire history of the world. They say the merchant, discovering his treasure gone, ran frantic through the streets and found the poor sailor at last down on the dock, just swallowing the final bite of a flower bulb worth enough to have fed a ship's whole crew for a year, and that the bewildered sailor was seized and hauled away to prison for it, baffled to the very last about what monstrous crime a man could possibly commit with an onion and a fish. The second tale is much the same in spirit, and just as fondly told. There was, they say, an English gentleman, a traveller, an amateur student of plants, who knew his herbs and his flowers, but knew nothing of the strange Dutch passion or the strange Dutch prices. He was visiting the house and garden of a wealthy Dutchman, and there, in a greenhouse, he came upon a curious bulb, apparently just left lying on a bench. And being a curious sort of man, the sort who likes to take a thing apart to see how it is made, he drew out his little pocket knife and began, calmly and methodically, to peel it and to cut it open, layer by patient layer, to study the secret structure of the flower folded up inside, remarking quietly to himself all the while on how very like a common onion the thing appeared to be. He was, of course, dissecting one of the most valuable objects in the entire country. The owner came upon him at his work and found his priceless treasure lying in neat, ruined slices upon the bench, and the astonished Englishman, who had meant no harm in all the world and had only wanted to understand a flower, was marched off before a magistrate to answer for a sum of money so vast he could scarcely believe it existed, all over a thing that looked, to his eyes, exactly like an onion. And the third tale is not about a foolish man at all, but about a single price, and it is the one that truly stops the breath. For there survives a famous list, an old, careful accounting of what was supposedly given in one single trade for one single bulb of a tulip called the Viceroy, and the Viceroy was not even the most precious of the varieties. Let me read you that list, slowly, in the dark, and you tell me if you can hold it all in your mind at once. For that one bulb, they say, a man gave 2 whole loads of wheat and 4 whole loads of rye, 4 fat oxen and 8 fat pigs and 12 fat sheep, 2 great barrels of wine and 4 barrels of beer and 2 barrels of butter, 1,000 pounds of cheese, a complete bed with all its sheets and hangings, a full and proper suit of fine clothes, and to round the whole bargain off, a silver drinking cup. Stand in that for a moment, in the warm dark. Everything a comfortable family might eat for years and years, and the very bed they would sleep in, and the clothes upon their backs, and a silver cup besides, the entire furnishing of a whole settled, prosperous life, all of it handed over, gladly, eagerly, for one brown sleeping bulb. On the strength of the single flame-colored flower, it might, come the spring, unfold into. And there were other tales told too, in the same astonished breath, of a single Semper Augustus offered for 12 good acres of farmland, of bulbs swapped for whole fine houses on the best canals in Amsterdam, of a thriving brewery traded away, the whole business, for a handful of the right bulbs, of humble men who had been nobody at all one year, and walked the next year in fine coats, rich on flowers. That was the height of it. The wild, shining, golden top of the wave, the winter of 1636, turning over into the new year of 1637, with the prices higher than they had ever climbed in all the history of the world. And everyone, it seemed, still buying, still certain, still sure down in their very bones that the wealthy strangers from every country on earth would always come and always pay, and that the love of tulips and the price of tulips would simply go on rising, gently and forever, into a golden sky that had no top to it at all. And if you could have drifted that winter, high and silent over the whole sleeping country, you might almost have seen the dream itself, unfolding behind every dark and frozen window. Sober weavers and grave merchants and tired, honest tradesmen, all of them gone down deep into sleep, and all of them dreaming the same impossible dream of endless summer fields of tulips rolling away to the far horizon, flaming crimson and violet and gold, each single bloom worth a small fortune, the whole cold land imagining itself awash in flowers that would never wilt and never fall and never, ever lose their worth. It was the loveliest dream a nation ever dreamed together. And it was, every last petal of it, made of nothing but wind. And then, one ordinary day in February, very quietly, with no warning and almost no sound, it stopped. Let the story slow now, with the season, as we come to the turning of it. Breathe, and let yourself grow heavier, and listen, because the ending is the gentlest part of all. There was no great crash, you understand, no thunderclap, nothing half so dramatic as all the wild stories of the rising had been. It is said that it began at an ordinary auction in the town of Haarlem, the very heart of the tulip country, on an ordinary winter's day. A parcel of bulbs was put up for sale, just as bulbs had been put up and sold 10,000 times before through all that golden year. And the auctioneer called for the opening bids, as he always did. And he waited. And, for the very first time, no one raised a hand. No one called out a price. The room was quiet. He lowered the asking figure, puzzled, and called again into the silence. And again, no one answered him. And a third time, lower still, and still that strange new silence held the room. And in that small held breath, in that one quiet space where, for a whole year, there had always been another eager bid, and now, suddenly, was none. In that one silence, the spell, very gently, broke. For it had only ever been a spell. That was the whole secret of it, laid bare in a single instant. The entire towering, glittering value of the thing had rested all along on one shared belief, held up by nothing but itself, the belief that tomorrow, surely, someone would pay even more than they had paid today. And the very moment that one belief so much as wavered, the moment a single room full of men paused and looked at one another and silently wondered whether it might not be wiser to wait, there was nothing underneath it at all. Nothing solid, nothing to catch it. Only the cold, long drop of the plainest truth in the world, that a flower is a flower, and a sleeping bulb is a sleeping bulb, and a promise is worth only as much as the next man's willingness to believe in it. Within days, the news ran out across the whole country like cracks racing across the ice on a frozen canal. The prices were falling. The buyers had simply vanished, melted away like the frost in the sun. And those who held the contracts, those who had cheerfully promised to pay thousands of guilders, come the spring, for bulbs still asleep in the ground, looked down at their little slips of paper with a cold and sinking feeling, and understood, slowly, that the flowers they had sworn a fortune for might soon be worth almost nothing at all. The buying had stopped, everywhere, all at once, the way a high fever breaks in the small hours of the night and leaves the body weak and damp and bewildered. And a great soft confusion settled over the tulip towns of Holland, as everyone tried at once to reckon what their promises were truly worth now, and who owed what to whom, and how on earth the whole vast glittering tangle of it was ever to be unwound. The growers gathered in worried assemblies to argue what was to be done. The town councils were asked to rule and hardly knew how. And slowly, awkwardly, the great shining dream began to be folded up and quietly put away. Now here we should pause, gently, and be honest with one another, the way this channel always tries to be. Because the stories I have told you tonight, the sailor and his onion, the Englishman and his knife, the great list of oxen and wine and silver, and most of all that picture of a whole nation cast down into ruin by a flower. These are wonderful stories, and they have been told and retold for hundreds of years, and you will find them even now in a great many serious books. But the truth, when patient historians went back, long afterward, and read carefully through the actual dusty records of who really bought, and who really sold, and who really lost, the truth turned out to be a good deal quieter, and gentler, and far stranger than all the legend. most of those famous and dreadful tales, it seems, did not come from the time itself at all. They came later, and a great many of them came from a single source, a Scottish writer, telling the whole story over again some 200 years afterward, in a wonderful and enormously popular book about the follies and the madness of crowds. He told it grandly and vividly, and more than a little wildly, reaching back for his material to a small handful of old pamphlets from the time. And here is the thing about those old pamphlets, the thing that changes the whole picture. They were not careful reports of what had happened. They were, most of them, very nearly sermons, little moralizing tracts, written at the time by serious, sober, disapproving men who wanted to warn their countrymen against the sin of greed, and who reached, quite naturally, for the most shocking and most colourful examples they could conjure, the better to make the lesson sting. There was one famous pamphlet written as a conversation between two characters, with names that tell you everything about its purpose. One called, more or less, True Mouth, the honest man, and the other called something like Greed Goods, the man hungry for gain. These were not journalists writing down the facts. They were preachers telling a parable. The sailor swallowing a fortune, the fool with his knife and the priceless onion. These were very likely the cautionary tales of their day. The tidy little fables a moralist invents to make a crowd gasp, and then nod, and then go home resolved to do better. Too perfect to be quite true. Told to make a point. And when the careful historians went and counted, when one of them in particular spent long years in the old archives, patiently tracing the real men and the real money, the great wave of ruin she had gone looking for simply was not there. The tulip trade, for all its noise and its fever, had really only ever drawn in a fairly small and tight-knit circle of people. Well-to-do merchants and skilled craftsmen, traders who mostly knew one another already, gathered in those warm, candle-lit back rooms. It was never the whole nation gone mad in the streets, never the poorest of the poor staking their daily bread on a flower. It was a particular crowd in a particular world. And when it all ended, there came no great wave of bankruptcies, no multitudes cast out and ruined, no despairing men drowned in the canals, none of the terrible scenes the legend so loves to paint. Most of those impossible contracts were, in the end, simply never paid at all. The courts, sensibly, declined to enforce such mad winter promises. And after a great deal of arguing and grumbling and negotiating, it was largely agreed that the contracts might be let go for a tiny fraction of their face value, or quietly torn up altogether and forgotten. A very great many people, it is true, had a thoroughly bad fright. Remarkably few were truly, lastingly ruined. And the Dutch Republic, the richest country in the whole wide world, woke up the morning after its strange flower dream, still the richest country in the whole wide world, and went calmly on being so prosperous and proud for a long, long time to come. It is, when you turn it over slowly in the dark, a gentler truth, and a far stranger one than the wild old legend ever was. Not a nation destroyed by a flower, but a nation that, for one single strange winter, briefly and harmlessly forgot itself. A sober, sensible, hard-working people who all together dreamed an enormous shared dream about something very small and very beautiful, and chased it up into an impossible sky. And then, one quiet grey morning, woke and blinked and felt a little foolish and dusted themselves off and went back to their suppers and their ledgers and their ordinary lives, mostly none the worse, and quietly the wiser. The real damage was done to pride and to something deeper and harder to name, to the comfortable old certainty that the worth of things is solid and steady and sure. For that, perhaps, was the true and lasting shock of the tulip, the quiet, unsettling discovery that a thing could be worth a fortune on one candlelit evening and almost nothing by the next, and that the whole vast difference between the two lay in nothing more solid and nothing more lasting than what people, together in a warm room, simply chose to believe. And the flower itself, the small, innocent cause of all of it. The flower was never once to blame, and the flower, in the end, did perfectly well. The Dutch did not fall out of love with the tulip. They only fell out of the strange, brief dream of growing rich from it. And once that fever had passed off and left them, they went on growing tulips and breeding them and loving them with a calmer and a truer and a more lasting affection than the fever had ever been. And over the long centuries that followed, the tulip became, of all the unlikely fates in the world for the flower that had once been worth a fine canal house, one of the most common and most cheerful and most beloved flowers on the whole earth. Until today, the very same low, flat fields of Holland that once traded a single sleeping bulb for the price of a house now grow them by the hundreds upon hundreds of millions, in long, glorious bands of colour laid across the spring landscape, stretching away flat to the far horizon under the wide grey northern sky. And they are cheap enough now that anyone at all, anywhere in the world, may carry home a great armful of them for a few small coins and set them in a jug on the table and be glad. The thing that was once worth more than gold became, in the fullness of time, a small everyday joy within the easy reach of everyone, which is, perhaps, exactly and only what a flower was ever truly meant to be. So let that be the gentle thought that you drift away upon tonight. Picture those quiet Dutch towns once more, 400 winters ago, settling slowly back down into their ordinary lives after their one extraordinary season. The canals freezing and thawing and freezing again as they always had. The candles lit in the narrow houses against the early dark. The church bells counting out the unhurried hours. And below the cold gardens, deep in the patient black earth, The bulbs sleeping on, every single one of them, exactly as they had slept all along, untroubled, waiting as they always wait for the spring. There was no disaster out there in the dark. There never had been. Only a great many ordinary people who had believed for one little while in something far too beautiful to be true, and who then gently stopped believing it and went back to their warm small rooms and their families and their suppers, none the worse in the end, and rather wiser and ready at last to sleep. There is nothing more to look for tonight, and nowhere left at all to hurry to. Let the prices and the promises fade softly away into the dark. They were only ever made of wind, and the wind has long since blown them all away. Let the candlelit tavern grow quiet, and the laughter die down, and the ledger close, and the last warm light in the last leaded window go gently out over the canal. Let the whole strange shining dream settle and dim and fade. Below the frozen gardens, in the deep, patient earth, the tulips are sleeping, every one of them, side by side in the cold, dark soil, not worried in the least about what they are worth, waiting without the slightest care for the warm days that always, always come at last. There is nothing in all the world that you need to do now but rest, exactly the way that whole tired country finally rested, and let the long, cold, beautiful night close softly down over everything. Sleep now. The winter will keep. The canals will keep. The buried flowers will keep their slow and certain secret under the ground. And the spring will come, as the spring always comes, whether anyone at all is awake to watch for it or not. Sleep well.